Morning, good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I hope that you have had a great and wonderful weekend. My name is Shantae Charles, and we are back with MLK Uncut. We are completing our series on this week of the Radical King. And we are moving into a new series this week by Thursday, looking likely. And that series is going to be some read aloud and discussion of White Like Me. And I'll come back at the end of today's reading and talk a little bit about the new book that we're going to be moving into. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to invite some people in to join us. And I hope that you will take a moment and do the same. Again, I hope everybody has had a wonderful weekend, refreshing weekend, gotten an opportunity to recharge, gotten an opportunity to be with those that you love, having an opportunity to pray, to seek the face of the Lord about your week. And hopefully you have heard some good things from Him. So I'm just taking a moment to invite some people in. And we're going to get started in just a moment. And yes, I have a curly fro. It's mine. It's not an extension, as somebody said this weekend. They thought it was an extension. No, it's my hair. So we are going to get started in just a second. And I'm excited because I believe that these last three sermons that MLK did, they actually were three of the last messages that he ministered leading up to his assassination. And I kind of feel like they are a culmination of some truth that he wanted to leave with people. He didn't sugarcoat things. He didn't say that, continuing the journey of civil rights was going to be easy or anything like that. But I think that he kind of eulogized himself in a way in these last three messages that we're going to cover Monday, today, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then we're going to go at the end of today's reading today. I will introduce the book that will be starting Thursday. So if you'd like to get that book, you can grab it. So let's get started. Today, we are reading MLK's message called The Drum Major Instinct. The Drum Major Instinct. And one thing I'm learning about Facebook Live is as long as you all are interactive or making comments or tapping the thumbs up and things like that, the broadcast will not begin to cut off. So please engage today so that we can keep the broadcast going, and so that Facebook, I guess as they're analyzing metrics, they will continue to keep the broadcast going without it pausing or stopping. So that's what I need from you all as we go forward. If you would say good morning, hello. If you have comments about what's being read that you want to leave in the comment section, please do so. Sometimes the comments move in a way that I can't read them all, but I do go back and I do read the comments and try to respond if there is a question or something that you all wanted to add to the reading today. So today we're looking at the drum major instinct, the drum major instinct. Dr. King delivered the following sermon, one of his most famous, at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church on February 4th, 1968, just 2 months before he was assassinated. Excerpts from the sermon were played at King's funeral service held at Ebenezer Baptist Church 5 days after his assassination. And remember, what I just said is that some of the words that he was speaking in this were pretty prophetic. Nobody wants to eulogize themselves, but that's in essence what happened. So Most people have not heard this particular sermon by MLK, so I would encourage you to share this on your page so people can get an idea of what his mindset was, 2 months before he was assassinated. This morning, I would like to use as a subject from which to preach the drum major instinct. And our text for this morning is taken from a very familiar passage in the 10th chapter as recorded by St. Mark. Beginning with the 35th verse of that chapter, we read these words. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. And he said unto them, What would ye that I should do for you? And they said unto him, Grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand in thy glory. But Jesus said unto them, Ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? And they said unto him, We can. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized withal shall ye be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared. And then Jesus goes on toward the end of that passage to say, But so shall it not be among you. But whosoever shall be among you shall be your servant, and whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. Again, this is MLK's sermon being delivered 2 months before he was assassinated, called the Drum Major Instinct. Now, if you have been to Washington, D.C., if you've been to the Capitol, you know that they have this huge monument of MLK there. And there used to be on the side of it the phrase drum major for righteousness, I believe, or drum major for change. And they actually took that off because someone was saying that he wouldn't have wanted that phrase to be on there. But if you read this sermon, you know he would have wanted that phrase to be on there because it relates to something he believed about himself. So just wanted to put that plug in that this phraseology that he uses in the sermon was actually engraved on his monument in DC, but it was taken off. The setting is clear. James and John are making a specific request of the master. They had dreamed, as most of the Hebrews dreamed, of a coming king of Israel who would set Jerusalem free and establish his kingdom on Mount Zion, and in righteousness rule the world. And they thought of Jesus as this kind of king. And they were thinking of that day when Jesus would reign supreme as this new king of Israel. And they were saying, Now when you establish your kingdom, let one of us sit on the right hand and the other on the left hand of your throne. Now, very quickly, we would automatically condemn James and John, and we would say they were selfish. Why would they make such a selfish request? But before we condemn them too quickly, let us look calmly and honestly at ourselves, and we will discover that we too have those same basic desires for recognition, for importance, that same desire for attention, that same desire to be first. Of course, the other disciples got mad with James and John, and you could understand why. But we must understand that we have some of the same James and John qualities, and there is deep down within all of us an instinct. It's a kind of drum major instinct, a desire to be out front, a desire to lead the parade, a desire to be first. And it is something that runs the whole gamut of life. So give me a thumbs up if you kind of agree with that there is a desire within each of us to lead or to be first or to be out front. And so before we begin to condemn them, let us see that we all have the drum major instinct. We all want to be important, to surpass others, to achieve distinction, to lead the parade. Alfred Adler, the great psychoanalyst, contends that this is the dominant impulse. Sigmund Freud used to contend that sex was the dominant impulse. And Adler came with a new argument saying that this quest for recognition, this desire for attention, this desire for distinction is the basic impulse, the basic drive of human life, this drum major instinct. And you know, we begin early to ask life to put us first. Our first cry as a baby was a bid for attention. And all through childhood, the drum major impulse or instinct is a major obsession. Children ask life to grant them first place. They are a little bundle of ego, and they have innately the drum major impulse or the drum major instinct. Now, in adult life, we still have it. And we really never get by it. We like to do something good, and we like to be praised for it. Now, if you don't believe that, just go on living life, and you will discover very soon that you like to be praised. Everybody likes it, as a matter of fact. And somehow this warm glow we feel when we are praised, or when our name is in print, or something of the vitamin A is something of a vitamin A to our ego. Nobody is unhappy when they are praised, even if they know they don't deserve it, and even if they don't believe it. The only unhappy people about praise is when that praise is going too much towards somebody else. But everybody likes to be praised because this is the real drum major instinct. Now, the presence of the drum major instinct is why so many people are joiners. You know, there are some people who must join and just join everything. And it's really a quest for attention and recognition and importance. And they get names that give them that impression. So you get your groups and they become the grand patron, or the little fellow who is henpecked at home, needs a chance to be most worthy of the most worthy of something. It is the drum major impulse and longing that runs the gamut of human life. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Somebody type the drum major instinct, drum major instinct. Now, the presence of this instinct explains why we are so often taken by advertisers, you know, those gentlemen of verbal persuasion, and they have a way of saying things to you that kind of gets you into buying. In order to be a man of distinction, you must drink this whiskey. In order to make your neighbors envious, you must drive this type of car. In order to be lovely to love, you must wear this kind of lipstick or this kind of perfume. And you know, before you know it, you're just buying stuff. That's the way the advertisers do it. I got a letter the other day, and it was a new magazine coming out. And it opened up, "Dear Dr. King, as you know, you are on many mailing lists, and you are categorized as highly intelligent, progressive, a lover of the arts and the sciences, and I know you will want to read what I have to say." Well, of course I did. After you said all of that and explained me so exactly, of course I wanted to read it. But very seriously, it goes through life. The drum major instinct is real. And you know what else it causes to happen? It often causes us to live above our means. It's nothing but the drum major instinct. Do you ever see people buy cars that they can't even begin to buy in terms of their income? You've seen people riding around in Cadillacs and Chryslers who don't earn enough to have a good Model T Ford. But it feeds a repressed ego. You know, economists tell us that your automobile should not cost more than half of your annual income. Blank, blank. So if you make an annual income, say, of $5,000, remember he's talking in terms of 1960s monetary value. If you have an income of $5,000, your car shouldn't cost more than about $2,500. That's just good economics. And if it's a family of two and both members of the family make $10,000, they would have to make out with one car. That would be good economics, although it's often inconvenient. But so often you haven't seen people making $5,000 a year and driving a car that costs $6,000, and they wonder why their ends never meet. That's a fact. Now I'll put a plug in with this. Good economics is often inconvenient because it forces you to live within your boundaries, and boundaries mean limits. And most people don't want to live within limits. Most people don't want to live within limits. Now, the economists also say that your house shouldn't cost, if you're buying a house, it shouldn't cost more than twice your income. That's based on the economy and how you would make ends meet. So again, if you have an income of $5,000, it's kind of difficult in this society. But say it's a family with an income of $10,000, the house shouldn't cost much more than $20,000. Well, I've seen folks making $10,000 living in a $40,000 and $50,000 house. And you know, they just barely make it. They get a check every month somewhere and they owe all of that out before it comes in. Never have anything to put away for rainy days. But now the problem is, it is the drum major instinct. And you know, you see people over and over again with the drum major instinct taking them over. And they just live their lives trying to outdo the Joneses. They got to get this coat because this particular coat is a little better and a little better looking than Mary's coat. And I got to drive this car because it's something about this car that makes my car a little better than my neighbor's car. I know a man who used to live in a $35,000 home, and other people started building $35,000 houses. So he built a $75,000 house. And then somebody else built a $75,000 house, and he built a $100,000 house. And I don't know where he's going to end up if he keeps living his life trying to keep up with the Joneses. There comes a time that the drum major instinct can become destructive. You take a pause right there. And that's where I want to move now. I want to move to the point of saying that if this instinct is not harnessed, it becomes a very dangerous, pernicious instinct. For instance, if it isn't harnessed, it causes one's personality to become distorted. I guess that's the most damaging aspect of it. What it does to the personality. If it isn't harnessed, you will end up day in and day out trying to deal with your ego problem by boasting. Have you ever heard people that you know, and I'm sure you've met them, that really become sickening because they just sit up all the time talking about themselves and they just boast and boast and boast, and that's the person who has not harnessed the drum major instinct. And then it does other things to the personality. It causes you to lie about who you know sometimes. There are some people who are influence peddlers. In 2016, we call them name droppers. And in their attempt to deal with the drum major instinct, they have to try to identify themselves with so-called big named people. And if you're not careful, they will make you think they know somebody that they really don't know. They know them well, they sip tea with them, they this and that. That happens to people. And the other thing is that it causes one to engage ultimately in activities that are merely used to get attention. Criminologists tell us that some people are driven to crime because of this drum major instinct. They don't feel that they are getting enough attention through normal channels of social behavior. And so they turn to antisocial behavior in order to get attention, in order to feel important. And so they get that gun. And before they know it, they have robbed a bank in a quest for recognition, or in a quest for importance. And then the final great tragedy of the distorted personality is the fact that when one fails to harness this instinct, he ends up trying to push others down in order to push himself up. And whenever you do that, you engage in some of the most vicious activities. You will spread evil, vicious, lying gossip on people because you're trying to pull them down in order to push yourself up. And the great issue of life is to harness the drum major instinct. Now, the other problem is when you don't harness the drum major instinct, this uncontrolled aspect of it is that it leads to snobbish exclusivism. Now I'm going to take another sip right there because MLK is going to say something very, very powerful. It leads to snobbish exclusivism. And you know, this is the danger of social clubs and fraternities. He says, I'm in a fraternity. I'm in 2 or 3. I'm not necessarily talking against them. I'm saying it's the danger. The danger is they can become forces of classism and exclusivism where somehow you get a degree of satisfaction because you're in something exclusive. And that's fulfilling something, you know, that I'm in this fraternity and it's the best fraternity in the world and everybody can't get in this fraternity. So it ends up, you know, a very exclusive kind of thing. And, you know, that can happen with the church. I know churches get in that bind sometimes. I've been to churches, you know, and they say we have so many doctors and we have so many school teachers and so many lawyers and so many businessmen in our church. And that's fine because doctors need to go to church and lawyers and businessmen, teachers, they ought to be in church. But they say that, even the preacher sometimes will go all through that. They say that as if the other people don't count. Let me repeat that. Let me repeat that. They mention all of the people in their congregation that have education or that have money or that have class or that have degrees. And they say that as if all the other people don't count. It's 2016 and people are still doing that. That's a whole other teaching, by the way, of why you shouldn't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. So let's keep reading. And the church is the one place where a doctor ought to forget that he's a doctor. The church is the one place where a PhD ought to forget that he's a PhD. The church is the one place that the school teacher ought to forget the degree she has behind her name. The church is the one place where the lawyer ought to forget that he's a lawyer. And any church that violates the whosoever will let him come doctrine is a dead, cold church and nothing but a little social club with a thin veneer of religiosity. Ouch. If you can't say amen, just say ouch. When the church is true to its nature, it says, whosoever will, let him come. Give me the gang member. Give me the prostitute. Give me the panhandler. Don't just give me the PhDs. When the church is true to its nature, it says, whosoever will, let him come. And it is not supposed to satisfy the perverted uses of the drum major instinct. It's the one place where everybody should be the same, standing before the common master and savior. And a recognition grows out of this, that all men are brothers because they are children of a common father. Now he's talking, of course, in terms of Christianity. because we are all God's creations. In Christianity, we are all God's children. Okay? The drum major instinct can lead to exclusivism in one's thinking, and can lead one to feel that because he has some training, he's a little better than that person who doesn't have it. Or because he has some economic security, he's a little better than the person who doesn't have it. And that's the uncontrolled, perverted use of the drum major instinct. Now, the other thing is that it leads to the tragic, and we've seen it happen so often, tragic racial prejudice. Many who have written about this problem, Lillian Smith used to say it beautifully in some of her books, and she would say it to the point of getting men and women to see the source of the problem. Do you know that a lot of the race problem grows out of the drum major instinct? A need that some people have to feel superior, a need that some people have to feel that they are first, and to feel that their white skin ordained them to be first. And they have said it over and over again in ways that we see with our own eyes. In fact, not too long ago, a man down in Mississippi said that God was a charter member of the White Citizens Council. And so God, being the charter member, means that everybody who's in that has a kind of divinity or a kind of superiority. And think of what has happened in history as a result of this perverted use of the drum major instinct. It has led to the most tragic prejudice, the most tragic expressions of man's inhumanity to man. The other day I was saying, I always try to do a little converting when I'm in jail. And when we were in jail in Birmingham the other day, the white wardens all enjoyed coming around the cell to talk about the race problem. And they were showing us where we were so wrong in demonstrating. And they were showing us where segregation was so right. Now, can you imagine getting locked up for civil rights and the white prison wardens coming around and telling you why you shouldn't be fighting for civil rights, and why segregation is right, and why you basically need to stay in your place as a Negro? And they were showing us where intermarriage was so wrong. So I would get to preaching and we would get to talking calmly because they wanted to talk about it. And then we got down one day to the point, that was the second or third day, to talk about where they lived and how much they were earning. And when those brothers told me what they were earning, I said, now you know what? You ought to be marching with us. You're just as poor as the Negro. And I said, you are put in the position of supporting your oppressor because through prejudice and blindness, you fail to see that the same forces that oppress Negroes in American society oppress poor white people. And all of you are living on is the satisfaction of your skin being white. And the drum major instinct of thinking that you are somebody big because you are white. And you're so poor, you can't send your children to school. You ought to be out here marching with every one of us every time we have a march. Now that's a fact, that the poor white man has been put into this position where through blindness and prejudice, he is forced to support his own oppressors. And the only thing he has going for him is this false feeling that he's superior because his skin is white and can't hardly eat and make his ends meet week in and week out. These are the people in 2016 that are being taken advantage of by one of our presidential candidates. Ding, ding, ding. And not only does this thing go into the racial struggle, it goes into the struggle between nations. And I would submit to you this morning that what is wrong in the world today is that the nations of the world are engaged in a bitter, colossal contest for supremacy. And if something doesn't happen to stop this trend, I'm sorely afraid that we won't be here to talk about Jesus Christ and about God and about brotherhood too many more years. If somebody doesn't bring an end to this suicidal thrust that we have in the world today, none of us are going to be around, because somebody's going to make the mistake through our senseless blunderings and dropping a nuclear bomb somewhere. And then another one is going to drop. And don't let anybody fool you. This can happen within a matter of seconds. They have 20 megaton bombs in Russia right now that can destroy a city as big as New York in 3 seconds. And everybody wiped away in every building. And we can do the same thing to Russia and China. But this is why we are drifting. And we are drifting there because nations are caught up with the drum major instinct. I must be first. I must be supreme. Our nation must rule the world. And I am sad to say that the nation in which we live is the supreme culprit. See, people didn't like these kind of sermons that MLK preached. And I'm going to continue to say it to America because I love this country too much to see the drift that it has taken. Listen, God didn't call America to do what she's doing in the world now. God didn't call America to engage in a senseless, unjust war as the war in Vietnam, or plug in any of the other wars that we've had since 9/11. And we are criminals in that war. We've committed more war crimes almost than any nation in the world, and I'm going to continue to say it. And we won't stop it because of our pride and our arrogance as a nation. Listen, he prophesying right now. But God has a way of even putting nations in their place. The God that I worship has a way of saying, don't play with me. He has a way of saying, as the God of the Old Testament used to say to the Hebrews, don't play with me, Israel. Don't play with me, Babylon. Be still and know that I am God. And if you don't stop your reckless course, I'll rise up and break the backbone of your power. And that can happen to America. Every now and then I go back and read Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And when I come and I look at America, I say to myself, the parallels are frightening. And we have perverted the drum major instinct. But let me rush on to my conclusion because I want you to see what Jesus was really saying. What was the answer that Jesus gave these men? It's very interesting. One would have thought that Jesus would have condemned them. One would have thought that Jesus would have said, you are out of place. You are selfish. Why would you raise such a question? But that isn't what Jesus did. He did something altogether different. He said in substance, oh, I see you want to be first. You want to be great. You want to be important. You want to be significant. Well, you ought to be. If you're going to be my disciple, you must be. But he reordered priorities and he said, don't give up this instinct. It's a good instinct if you use it right. It's a good instinct if you don't distort it and pervert it. Don't give it up. Keep feeling the need for being important. Keep feeling the need for being first. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. This is what I want you to do. And he transformed the situation by giving a new definition of greatness. And you know how he said it? He said, now, brethren, I can't give you any greatness. And really, I can't make you first. This is what Jesus said to James and John. You must earn it. True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And the right hand and the left are not mine to give. They belong to those who are prepared. And so Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. I know a man, and I just want to talk about him a minute, and maybe you will discover who I'm talking about as I go down the way, because he was a great one. And he just went about serving. He was born in an obscure village, the child of a poor peasant woman. And then he grew up still in another obscure village where he worked as a carpenter until he was 30 years old. Then for 3 years, he got on his feet and he was an itinerant preacher. And he went about doing some things. He didn't have much. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never owned a house. He never went to college. He never visited a big city. He never went 200 miles from where he was born. He did none of the usual things that the world would associate with greatness. He had no credentials but himself. He was only 33 when the tide of public opinion turned against him. They called him a rabble-rouser. They called him a troublemaker. They said he was an agitator. He practiced civil disobedience. He broke injunctions. And so he was turned over to his enemies and went through the mockery of a trial. And the irony of it all is that his friends turned him over to them. One of his closest friends denied him. Another of his friends turned him over to his enemies. And while he was dying, the people who killed him gambled for his clothing, the only possession that he had in the world. When he was dead, he was buried in a borrowed tomb through the pity of a friend. 19 centuries have come and gone, and today he stands as the most influential figure that ever entered human history. All of the armies that ever marched, all of the navies that ever sailed, all of the parliaments that ever sat, all of the kings that ever reigned put together have not affected the life of man on this earth as much as that one solitary life. His name may be a familiar one, but today I can hear them talking about him. Every now and then somebody says he's King of Kings. And again, I can hear somebody saying he's Lord of Lords. And somewhere else I can hear somebody saying, in Christ there is no east nor west. And then they go on and talk about in him there's no north and south, but one great fellowship of love throughout the whole wide world. He didn't have anything. He just went around serving and doing good. This morning, you can be on his right hand and his left hand if you serve. It's the only way in. Every now and then, I guess we all think realistically about that day when we will be victimized with what is life's final common denominator. That's something that we call death. We all think about it. And every now and then I think about my own death and I think about my own funeral. And I don't think of it in a morbid sense. And every now and then I ask myself, what is it that I would want said? And I leave the word to you this morning. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, and I don't want a long funeral, and if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I was a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian ought, if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side, not for any selfish reason. I want to be on your right or your left side, not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition, but I just want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and in commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world. Martin Luther King, The Drum Major Instinct, delivered at Ebenezer Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia, February 4th, 1968, 2 months before he was assassinated. I hope that you have gotten something out of this. I know I certainly did. By the time I finished reading it, I was probably up about 2 o'clock in the morning and ready to preach. But as he said, God has instilled in us, God has placed within us this drum major instinct. And that drum major instinct to be great means that we need to really truly understand what greatness is. And greatness comes out of the ability to serve somebody. So as we continue, as we begin to close out the Radical King this week on Thursday, we are going to our next read. We're going to start reading White Like Me by Tim Wise. White Like Me, Reflections on Race from a Privileged Son. And I'll just read the little blurb on the back. Amen. It says, with new updated chapters, White Like Me is part memoir, part essay. It is a personal examination of the way in which racial privilege shapes the daily lives of white Americans in every realm: employment, education, housing, criminal justice, and elsewhere. Using stories from his own life, Tim Wise demonstrates the ways in which racism not only burdens people of color, but also benefits in relative terms those who are white like him. He discusses how racial privilege can harm whites in the long run and make progressive social change less likely. He explores the ways in which whites can challenge their unjust privileges and explains in clear and convincing language why it is in the best interest of whites themselves to do so. Using anecdotes instead of statistics, Wise weaves a narrative that is at once readable and yet scholarly, analytical and yet accessible. And this book is actually taught in, colleges and some high schools. So if you're interested in keeping up with us and where we'll be reading from, this is where we're going next, beginning Thursday. White Like Me by Tim Wise. And if you notice, even in today's message, MLK actually began to talk about some of the things that Tim Wise is actually going to go into, which is what is it exactly that is propping up this privilege, especially for poor white people? Why do they feel the need to support their oppressor? Why do they feel the need to support their oppressor? So Tim White, as a white man, is going to go into detail in that. And I'm excited and I can't wait for us to get started on that on Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to be covering MLK's next speech, and that speech is All Labor Has Dignity. So we're going to cover that on tomorrow, and then Wednesday we are going to end with the last message that MLK preached on the eve of his assassination, that he preached at Mason Temple in Memphis. Mason Temple is, I believe, the headquarters for Church of God in Christ. So that last message that he gave on the eve of his assassination is pretty powerful, and it's entitled, I've Been to the Mountaintop. So if you want to hear that as we analyze it on Wednesday, that will be Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll talk about all labor has dignity. So we are done for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's message. I hope that you are finding your drum major instinct today by serving somebody. Remember, the greatest of you, the greatest among you shall be your servant. So have a great day. Be thinking about that this week. How can I serve somebody? How can I serve somebody? And yes, we're going to talk tomorrow about all labor has dignity. All labor has dignity. Great and powerful message there that he gives. So I hope you've been getting something out of this. I pray that you have a great and wonderful day. This is Motivation Monday. Stay motivated. Stay pumped. Stay with an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying for you in your day. And blessings and peace to you all. If you are just coming in, good morning. We are done for this morning. And please go back and watch the replay. Also, I forgot to mention, if you'd like to go back and watch any of the previous teachings, just click the hashtag The Radical King, and you'll be able to see the previous teachings for this. If you want to go back further, find the hashtag Why We Can't Wait, or find the hashtag Chaos or Community, and it will pull up from Facebook Live all of our previous teachings. You can also find them archived under my playlist on YouTube. YouTube channel is Church Love 333, and the playlist is MLK Uncut. That's all for this morning. Take care. Big hugs. Take care, and God bless. Again, thank you all for viewing through the live stream. I pray that you were blessed as well today. Take care, and God bless.